When we think of the great voices in classic Disney animation, a few legends instantly come to mind. There's Sterling Holloway, the gentle voice of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yes, time for my stoutness exercise.
And many other characters in Disney animation like the stork in Dumbo.
Straight from heaven, up above, here is a baby for you to love.
There's Ed Wynn, whose manic charm brought the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland to life.
Mustard! Don't let's be silly.
Later, Uncle Albert in Mary Poppins.
I love to laugh.
And who could forget Pinto Colvig, who defined Goofy.
Oh, the world owes me a living.
And of course there's Clarence Nash, whose quack made Donald Duck a star. But for me, one of the most memorable voices in all classic Disney animation belongs to a comedian most people probably barely remember today. He's a bug-eyed, mustachioed comedic whirlwind named Jerry Colonna. His voice and face left an indelible mark on one of Disney's most energetic and most overlooked shorts, The Brave Engineer.
"'Tis a morning!"
Hi, I'm Dennis, and this is West of Neverland. If you like classic Disney animation and the stories behind the voices, the songs, and the shorts that built it, then you're in the right place. Jerry Colonna wasn't a traditional Disney voice actor, and maybe that's part of why both he and The Brave Engineer have faded from the spotlight. Jerry Colonna came from radio, where comedy wasn't subtle and the vocal performance had to carry the show. And nowhere is that clearer than in the Disney short, The Brave Engineer.
Get off! Get off!
But to understand why Jerry Colonna was the perfect voice for that short, we first have to rewind back to the real railroad engineer who went by the name of Casey Jones, and the night his story left the rails of history and entered American legend. The story that made John Luther, or Casey, Jones famous took place on April 3rd, 1900. That night, a southbound passenger train was racing through Mississippi. Already running behind schedule, ahead of it, a long freight train had stalled partially on the main line. In the passenger train's cab, Casey Jones saw the danger ahead. Instead of saving himself, he shouted to his fireman Simeon Webb to jump. Webb leapt from the locomotive and survived. Casey stayed at the controls. He worked the brake and sounded the whistle, slowing the train as much as possible before it plowed into the rear of the freight train. By the time the wreckage settled, Casey Jones was dead, the only fatality of the crash. Casey's heroic story became an instant legend among the railroad workers. The image of an engineer who stayed with his train until the very end, sacrificing himself while sparing everyone else on board. Almost immediately, the story began circulating through conversation, exaggeration, and eventually song. One of the first people to give Casey's story a melody was Wallace Saunders, who worked alongside Casey. Saunders composed an early ballad about the wreck, sung informally in the roundhouses at railroad yards, and it was never published or really formally written down. Then in 1909, Saunders' song was transformed into a novelty song by two vaudeville songwriters, T. Lawrence Siebert and Eddie Newton, who wrote the song Casey Jones, The Brave Engineer.
Come all you rounders if you want to hear a story about a brave engineer. Casey Jones was the rounder's name. On a 6-8-wheeler, Boise was his fame.
From that point on, Casey Jones was no longer just a man who died in a wreck. He was a character, a folk hero who would resurface in many ways in the early 20th century. The first Disney connection to Casey Jones actually comes in a roundabout way through Mickey Mouse himself. The song that inspired Steamboat Willie, Steamboat Bill, was written by Ren Shields and the Leighton brothers. It's a comic story about a riverboat captain who pushes his steamboat too hard in a high-stakes race on the Mississippi.
Down the Mississippi steamed the whippoor will, commanded by the pilot, Mr. Steamboat Bill. The owners gave him orders on the strict QT to try and beat the record of the Robert E. Lee.
When Bill is killed in the explosion of his vessel because he was pushing it too hard, his widow delivers the punchline, telling their children, Blessed honey lambs, the next papa that you have will be a railroad man.
Said she to the children, blessed honey lamb, the next papa that you have will be a railroad man.
That line ending Steamboat Bill is a nod to the Casey Jones ballad, proof that by the first time Mickey whistled at the wheel, Casey Jones was already embedded into American pop culture. But long before Disney's The Brave Engineer debuted in 1950, the legend of Casey Jones had already crept into Disney animation in a quieter and more symbolic way. In Dumbo, the circus train that hauls the big top from town to town is named Casey Jr.
Casey Jr.'s coming down the track with a smoky stack.
This is a clear nod to the famed railroad engineer. Casey Jr. is an anthropomorphic locomotive. His name connects him to the cultural idea audiences would recognize, a train as a symbol of perseverance, responsibility, and hard work. That idea resurfaced in the sequence itself. As Casey Jr. struggles uphill, he repeats the now famous line, "I think I can, I think I can."
I think I can, I think I can, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought.
Directly referencing the American folktale The Little Engine That Could, the story about optimism and determination in the face of impossible odds. Casey Jr. draws from the same tradition that elevated Casey Jones into folklore, the belief that trains and the people who run them embody grit, endurance, and the duty to keep moving forward no matter what the cost. But the influence of Casey Jr. didn't stop at the big screen. When Disneyland opened in 1955, just weeks after the park's debut, Casey Jr., the circus train, became one of Fantasyland's earliest attractions. Originally set to open with Disneyland on July 17, 1955, mechanical issues postponed its debut by just a couple of weeks. But by July 31st, Casey Jr. was chugging through Fantasyland, giving park guests a first-hand experience of that iconic locomotive. More than half a century later, the Casey Jr. circus train is still running in Fantasyland, one of the few opening-era attractions that continue to delight new generations of guests. And if Casey Jr. was a symbolic echo of the Casey Jones legend, then The Brave Engineer was Disney finally telling the story, even if that story was unmistakably Disney-fied along the way. The Brave Engineer was directed by Jack Kinney, best known for the goofy how-to cartoon.
For pitching demands limber brains and well-coordinated muscles, not only in the throwing arm, but of the entire body, in order to achieve that bullet-like delivery of the ball.
From the opening moments, it's clear that this is not an attempt to faithfully recreate the Casey Jones story. In this short, Casey is introduced as a legendary engineer of a mail train.
Casey Jones was the router's name. On a high right wheeler he won his fame.
Known for always delivering the mail on time. The real-life tragedy of Casey Jones is transformed into a frantic race against time.
Aha! Didn't think we'd make it, did you?
As Disney's Casey battles floods,
Nice day, wasn't it?
avoids a cow on the tracks,
What now, brown cow? Beat it, bossy. I'm busy. Got a date and I'm late. Go back to your mate. You old cow, you old cow, you old cow. Fresh. Homogenized.
foils the plot of a dastardly villain who ties a woman to the tracks,
I'll save you.
No, no, save me, no!
My hero.
Curses. Foiled again.
and also defeats a gang of bandits.
Take that. And that. And that. And that. And that. And that. And that. Time out. Substitution. Take this. And this. And this.
While keeping the train running. In the end, the danger of the train collision is depicted,
What's that coming? Looks like a train. Egad, it is a train.
but the life of Casey Jones is preserved. The tragic ending is replaced with an almost on-time mail delivery.
Next time, take the train.
This energetic short is held together by the narration and music. The singing is performed by the Kingsmen.
The rain was coming down 5 or 6 weeks. The railroad track was like the bed of a creek. It slowed him down to a 10-mile gait. And it made the Western Mail exactly
had previously performed in Disney's 1946 package film Make Mine Music, singing in the segment The Martins and the Coys.
Gather round me, children, and I'll tell a story of the mountains in the days when guns was law. When two families got disputing, it was bound to end in shooting. So just listen and I'll tell you what I saw.
Here they deliver the brisk, tightly arranged variation of the Ballad of Casey Jones.
Egad! Hours behind, there isn't time to fret. Keep knocking at the fire door, don't give up yet.
Fine-tuned to match the short's breakneck pace. To make a cartoon like this work, Disney also needed a narrator who matched the magnitude of the legend of Casey Jones. And for that, there was only one choice: Jerry Colonna. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Disney history, hit that like button and subscribe. I've got many more stories like this coming your way. Jerry Colonna, the comedian who was brought in to bring the Ballad of Casey Jones to life in The Brave Engineer, was a well-known figure in American entertainment. He had built his reputation in radio, most notably as the unpredictable comic sidekick of Bob Hope.
Man thinks that I am a bit wacky. Why don't you get back in the sacky? There's room for two. Your nose and you.
His comedy was loud and theatrical. His signature style was loud, long, comedically drawn-out notes to punctuate his songs. His comedic delivery was fast-paced and witty, a style he brought to his work for Disney.
What do you know? She-Man!
And Disney had already worked with Jerry Colonna before. In Make Mine Music, he narrated Casey at the Bat, bringing his trademark frantic comedic tone to Ernest Thayer's poem.
The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville Nine that day. The score was 4-2, with but one inning left to play.
His delivery emphasized the crazy story taking place on screen.
But he was really blazing into the wonderment of all, laid the peg for the cover off the bar.
And the humiliating defeat of Casey.
But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out.
That approach carried directly into the breakneck pace of The Brave Engineer. By the way, Casey at the Bat and Casey Jones really aren't related stories except for the name, Casey. Colonna doesn't simply describe what's happening on screen, he pushes the tempo forward, inserting jokes and funny commentary into the action.
He who wrecks a train on a hillside is not on the level. Going down.
And he maintains the rapidly escalating story that's unfolding on screen.
Not in condition. Smokes too much.
Without Colonna, The Brave Engineer would probably still be an effective retelling of the Casey Jones story, but Colonna transforms it into a new legend for the Disney audience. And The Brave Engineer wouldn't be Colonna's last contribution to Disney animation. The following year, Jerry Colonna's voice and even his appearance would help shape one of the studio's most recognizable characters. Jerry Colonna's most well-known work for Disney came just a year after The Brave Engineer. In Alice in Wonderland, Colonna voiced the March Hare,
See how the trouble you've started?
appearing in the film's Tea Party sequence, keeping perfect pace with Ed Wynn's eccentric Mad Hatter.
You enjoyed our singing?
Oh, what a delightful time.
What makes the role especially notable is that the March Hare is also a caricature of Colonna himself.
It is.
His wild eyes and frantic delivery closely mirror Colonna's comedic persona.
At last, we're face to face, and as we kiss in an embrace. She doesn't know what an on-birthday is.
Making the March Hare and the Mad Hatter two of the earliest Disney characters clearly designed and shaped around their voice actors. I really wish there was much more of him in Disney productions, and I really wish he was better known today. More than 70 years after The Brave Engineer, the spirit of that short resurfaced in an unexpected place. In 2023, animator Andrew Chesworth released an independent animated short titled The Brave Locomotive. Created outside the Disney studio system, the film feels immediately familiar. The Brave Locomotive follows a small steam engine named Linus and his engineer as they face a John Henry-style struggle against obsolescence.
Presenting Samson.
Visually and structurally, the short draws clear inspiration from mid-century animation, both in painted backgrounds, expressive characters, and a story that blends sincere emotion and tall tale exaggeration. It's not a remake of The Brave Engineer, and it's also not a retelling of the Casey Jones story, but the influence of both is clear. There's even a small tribute embedded in the film. The train stops at a town called Colonnaville, a quiet nod to Jerry Colonna himself. It's the kind of detail that would go unnoticed by most viewers, but instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with the Brave Engineer and Colonna's role in shaping its identity. If you haven't seen The Brave Locomotive, I highly recommend checking it out. It's freely available to watch on YouTube. As someone who loves traditional animation, it's an encouraging return to form, and I hope it marks the beginning of a broader resurgence in handmade animation. The story of Casey Jones began with a real person in a real railroad accident on a dark stretch of track in Mississippi. From there, it became a folk song and a novelty hit, and then eventually turned into a Disney short that turned tragedy into a wild ride. The kind of breakneck cartoon chaos that would probably have made Mr. Toad a little jealous.
What have I been missing?
And as far as Jerry Colonna was concerned, whether he was narrating Casey at the Bat,
They saw his face go stern and cold. They saw his muscles strain. And they knew that Casey would not let that ball go by again.
powering the Brave Engineer,
Hiya, silverware!
or bringing the March Hare to life in Alice in Wonderland,
But that's the point. If you don't think, you shouldn't talk.
Colonna didn't just tell stories. His voice carried the same exaggeration, speed, and theatricality that shaped these legends in the first place.
Well, back to work. Egad! Egad!
The story of Casey Jones, the Brave Engineer, might not live in popular culture the way it once did, but that's part of what I love most about this history. These stories become treasures waiting to be rediscovered, passed down to newer generations, and occasionally inspiring new stories like The Brave Locomotive. By the way, if you're curious about my sources for this video, I've linked to them in the description below. And I'd love to hear from you. Which Jerry Colonna performance stands out to you the most? Casey at the Bat, The Brave Engineer, or The March Hare? Or is there a classic Disney voice that you think needs more recognition? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Disney history, I think you'll really like my video on Once Upon a Winter Time. This is another short where music, design, and animation come together in a way that feels special all these years later. Go ahead and check it out, and I'll see you real soon.